Polly sat alone at the kitchen table, her gaze fixed on the empty coffee cup before her. She dreaded the impending conversation with her husband, Fred, scheduled for today. Thankfully, their children were off at the neighbors for a sleepover, sparing them from the inevitable shouting match that lay ahead. Reflecting on how a bit of harmless flirting and casual lunches had spiraled out of control, Polly couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that weighed heavy on her shoulders. For over a month, she had sensed something amiss, but it wasn't until the latest test results that she knew she had to come clean to Fred. As she waited for him to return from his early morning errand to the store, apprehension gnawed at her. The sudden ring of the doorbell and the rumble of a large truck pulling into the driveway startled Polly. Unprepared for any visitors, she assumed it was just someone lost and seeking directions. "May I assist you?" Polly greeted, opening the door to the unexpected visitor. "Are you Polly Brown?" the man queried. "Yes, I am Polly Brown. How may I assist you?" she repeated, puzzled. "I have a work order to pack up your belongings and transport them to 815 Southwest 10th Ave, the man informed her, thrusting a clipboard toward Polly as he signaled for his crew to begin unloading boxes from the truck. "There must be some mistake," Polly protested, handing back the paperwork. "I never initiated such an order." "Miss, I understand, but the order was placed by a Mr. Fred Brown a week ago," he explained, pointing to Fred's signature at the bottom of the document. "My husband will be back shortly, and I'm certain he can resolve this misunderstanding," Polly insisted. "Mrs. Brown, I just departed from your husband 20 minutes ago, and he instructed me to give you this envelope if you caused any trouble," he stated, handing Polly a large manila envelope. "Now, if you wouldn't mind, could you please direct us to the master bedroom? We've only got an hour to wrap this up," he requested. Polly opened the envelope and glanced briefly at the single sheet of paper. In a barely audible voice, she instructed the workman, "First room at the top of the stairs, on the right." The men hurried upstairs, and for the next 40 minutes, they worked diligently, packing and hauling box after box to the truck parked in the driveway. Occasionally, they attempted to ask Polly questions, but she seemed mentally elsewhere, so they proceeded as best they could. Within 50 minutes, they announced their completion and readiness to depart. "I'll need your signature, Mrs. Brown," the lead workman requested. Polly hastily scrawled something at the bottom of the paper, and they swiftly exited. Exactly 10 minutes later, Polly's father arrived. "Darling," Harry said, observing his daughter's stunned expression. "Fred asked me to pick you up, figuring you might not be in a state to drive," he explained. "Your mother's waiting for us, and the movers are ready to drop off your belongings. We'll store everything in the garage for now and sort it out later," Harry informed Polly as he guided her out of the house. "This can't be happening," Polly muttered aloud as Harry assisted her into the car. "Where's Fred? If Fred were here, he could sort out this entire mess," she pondered silently. "He'd listen, wouldn't he?" Half an hour later, Fred returned to the house, accompanied by a locksmith. "Change all the locks, including the code on the garage door opener," he directed the locksmith. "Leave me 5 sets of keys, and ensure there's a deadbolt on the side garage door," he instructed, stepping into the now vacant home. Ascending the stairs, Fred found that the workers had done a commendable job, given the tight schedule he had imposed. Glancing at his watch, he realized he had only 15 minutes before the next truck arrived. Grabbing a couple of empty cartons, he completed the packing of the remaining items the movers had overlooked, including Polly's makeup and toiletries from their bathroom vanity. Carrying down the last 2 boxes, he noticed the arrival of the next truck. Fred greeted his sister Melissa as she entered with the movers. "Hey there," he said, pulling her into a hug. "Why don't you take the second bedroom on the left, next to the bathroom? It's much bigger than the spare room and has a walk-in closet," he suggested. "We can sort out the kids' things later." "Sure thing. What about Polly's car?" Melissa inquired. "Her dad is supposed to pick it up later tonight, after he's finished with the movers," Fred informed her. "Could you handle things here for a bit?" "I need to swing by the office for a minute. I'll grab pizzas for tonight," he added, heading towards the garage. "No mushrooms," Melissa called after him, then turned to direct the movers on where to place everything. Right on time, Fred noted, glancing at his watch. From his car, Fred observed his three best friends engaged in a heated discussion with Simon, a coworker of his wife, who didn't appear pleased. After about 5 minutes, Mike, one of the three men, approached Fred's parked car. He thought we were joking until I pulled out my knife, Mike recounted with a grin. Gave him two choices: leave within 24 hours or have an unfortunate accident with said knife. Told him we'd swing by tomorrow for his decision. He finished, amusement evident in his tone. How you holding up, buddy? I'll be better tomorrow, Fred replied somberly. Never imagined dealing with anything like this, but I'll manage. He thanked Mike, mentioning he needed to head off but would catch up with him later at the house. Picking up the copies of pictures and receipts dropped off by the investigator at his office on Friday afternoon, Fred knew their contents without needing to open them. They were for his lawyer's reference. Well, there goes $1,000, he lamented as he glanced at the invoice. After dropping the envelope at his lawyer's office, Fred grabbed 4 pizzas, a case of beer, and made his way home. Tonight called for total indulgence, as tomorrow he'd be a single parent, needing to set a new example, certainly not like the one his soon-to-be ex-wife had set. Upon his return, the moving truck had vanished and Melissa, along with a few friends, was busy setting up her bedroom. Hey bro, she greeted Fred as he ascended the stairs. Where's all the muscle you promised me? She quipped. They're wrapping up something for me, but they should be here in about an hour. Why don't we take a break and grab a bite to eat? Fred suggested to Melissa and her friends. Mike and his companions finally arrived just before 4 o'clock, and by 7 o'clock, everyone was gathered, enjoying a few drinks and casual conversation. Everyone, that is, except Fred. Melissa eventually found him in the den, engrossed in old home movies. We've got everything upstairs in my room, and everyone's finished eating. Is there anything I can get for you? She asked. Not right now, honey, but thanks for asking, Fred responded. I just need some time alone, that's all. Well, I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything, Melissa assured him, planting a kiss on the top of his head before closing the door. I never saw it coming, Fred murmured to himself. How could I have been so blind? Just over a month ago, while paying bills online, Fred stumbled upon a charge for a checkup at the local clinic. Han, did you go to the doctor a week ago? He called out to his wife, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I thought I had the flu and went in for a B12 shot, she yelled back. Ridiculous rates, he muttered to himself as he examined the bill. $125 for a simple exam and a B12 shot, even after insurance. I'll call them tomorrow. Maybe there's a mistake, he thought, though deep down he knew there wasn't. The following day, Fred dialed the clinic's billing department from his office. Good morning. How can I assist you? The receptionist answered. Good morning. My wife, Polly Brown, visited your clinic 2 weeks ago, and I believe we were overcharged for her visit, he explained. She only had a routine exam and a B12 shot, but we were billed $125, when it should have been no more than $45 after insurance. There was a brief pause before the receptionist spoke again. Polly Brown, you said, she confirmed. Yes, that's correct, Fred replied. Sir, in addition to the B12 shot, your wife underwent some blood work and further tests, she informed him. Blood work and tests? What kind of tests? Fred inquired, his annoyance growing. I'm sorry, sir, but we cannot disclose that information, she responded. Listen, Polly is my wife, and I'm not asking for the results, just what kind of tests were conducted, Fred said, his frustration evident. As her husband, she underwent a full blood workup and a pregnancy test, the receptionist revealed. Thank you for the information. I'll go ahead and settle the bill, Fred replied curtly, ending the call. Can you say heart attack? Why on earth was Polly getting a pregnancy test, especially considering Fred had undergone a vasectomy right after their second child? It didn't require a genius to piece together what might be going on. Polly had always struggled with various forms of birth control and staunchly opposed abortion, often stating, it's murder, no matter how you look at it. Following the slip that resulted in their second daughter, Fred opted for a vasectomy, thinking it would prevent any further surprises and eliminate the abortion debate once and for all, or so he thought. 10 minutes later, Fred found himself seated at his desk, leafing through the yellow pages in search of a private investigator. Until then, he had never doubted Polly's fidelity, but now uncertainty gnawed at him. Fred had never anticipated the cost of having his wife surveilled. She must be involved with someone from work, he confided in the PI. She consistently returns home at the same time, and aside from occasional team-building seminars, she's always at the office. I need you to commence immediately because I'm going insane, not knowing if she's been unfaithful, and I damn well need to know with whom. His next call was to Ben, a close friend who also worked in Polly's division. Ben, Fred Brown here, he began. I hate to ask, but I need to speak with you outside of work, if possible. Can we meet at Moe's after hours? Great, see you around 5:30, he arranged. Fred wasn't entirely certain how to broach the subject with Ben, but figured honesty, given their long-standing friendship, would be the most effective approach. As they sat sipping on Bud Lights, Fred broached the difficult topic. Ben, I've just discovered that Polly is cheating on me, and I suspect it's someone from her workplace, he confided. It seems to have been going on for a couple of months, and I need to identify the person. Ben was taken aback. No way. Fred, Polly would never do that to you. There must be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Ben. I have evidence. I just need to know who it is, Fred insisted. Fred, our company isn't that big, and I know most of the employees by their first names, Ben reassured him. Sure, there's the usual office banter, but nothing more than that. However, I have 2 colleagues owing me big favors, and they'll know if anything's up. Trust me, I'll reach out if I uncover anything. I'm sorry about Polly, he added sincerely. No more than I am, Fred responded quietly. The next 3 days were agonizing. Fred wrestled with the urge to confront Polly and demand answers, but at this juncture, it seemed futile. Their sex life, while not extraordinary, was satisfactory. They made love about twice a week, which seemed reasonable given their parental responsibilities. Yet Polly hadn't expressed any desire to explore new things in bed, and she continued to reject Fred's requests for certain intimate acts. Nothing had changed in that regard. One detail stuck in Fred's mind. Whenever Polly returned from her monthly seminars, they never engaged in intimacy that night. Perhaps it was mere coincidence, but Fred couldn't help but scrutinize every detail for anomalies. These seminars typically took place on Friday afternoons at the Best Western and lasted for around 2 hours, followed by a casual gathering for happy hour and snacks. On those evenings, Fred would take his kids out or visit his parents for dinner, ensuring they didn't return home until after 8 o'clock. He found himself questioning every aspect of his marriage, desperately searching for a motive behind Polly's infidelity. On Friday morning, Ben called with an update. If she's involved with someone at work, it's likely a new guy named Simon Turner. He joined last year, and there's talk that they've had lunch together a few times and have been spotted dancing during happy hour, he informed Fred. I know it's not concrete evidence, but it's the best lead I could find. I hope you two can work things out. Thanks for the intel, but I'm not holding out much hope, Fred replied somberly. He passed the information along to the private investigator Ben had recommended and then closed up shop, heading home. How was he supposed to play the role of the normal loving husband when all he wanted to do was kick Polly out and try to piece together his shattered life? The weekend proceeded with typical family activities: yard work, soccer practice, and a neighborhood barbecue on Sunday. Despite Polly's attempts to initiate intimacy on Saturday night, Fred made an excuse about an upset stomach and turned away, feigning sleep. Thankfully, Monday arrived, offering Fred respite from the turmoil at home. Work became his refuge, a place where he could focus and set his plans into motion. The final piece of the puzzle was initiating the divorce proceedings. He had already retained a lawyer and paid the retainer. Living in a no-fault state and both being employed, Fred sought an equitable 50-50 split with no spousal support. However, one non-negotiable demand was full custody of their 2 daughters. Polly's betrayal was monumental, and unless she agreed to his terms, he threatened to expose her infidelity to everyone she knew. Anticipating Polly's reaction, Fred obtained a restraining order, ensuring she couldn't come within 250 feet of the house, though she could still call the girls. By Tuesday, the private investigator had uncovered damning evidence: 2 motel room receipts from Best Western, registered under Simon's name, on the Friday seminar nights. Surveillance photos depicted Polly and Simon arm in arm entering the room, with one capturing them kissing in the hallway. Fred declined to view the incriminating images, instructing the investigator to compile everything into a manila envelope and deliver it to his office. He expressed gratitude for the swift work and assured payment would be sent promptly. By the end of the eventful week, all arrangements had been made. The kids were scheduled for sleepovers on Friday and Saturday nights. Both sets of movers were booked. The locksmith was set to arrive by 2 o'clock, and the paperwork would be filed on Monday, served on Tuesday afternoon. Polly has no idea what's about to hit her, Fred mused, determined to maintain the element of surprise. Polly's story. Seated at the kitchen table, engulfed in self-pity, I was caught off guard when the movers arrived at the door. I instructed them to wait until Fred returned, but when he handed me the envelope, my heart sank. With a sinking feeling, I realized that Fred was aware of everything. It contained a copy of the pregnancy test I had taken at the clinic. Initially, I dismissed my symptoms as the flu, a common ailment circulating at the time. However, as days passed and the illness lingered without the usual body aches, an unsettling thought crept into my mind. It was Carol's light-hearted remark one morning, "Sounds like you're pregnant again, Polly," that planted the seed of possibility in my mind. Simon's arrival coincided with my 30th birthday, a milestone that left me feeling like an aging married woman. I assisted in his training, finding him to be pleasant, impeccably scented, and quite handsome. Despite our 5-year age gap, we shared similar tastes in music and a mutual love for Mexican cuisine. Our interactions escalated as we began meeting for lunches at the local Mexican restaurant and rendezvousing for drinks after our monthly seminars. One Friday evening, during a team-building event, the music beckoned us to the dance floor. We swayed through 2 fast-paced songs before a slow melody began. I hadn't danced a slow dance with anyone since my marriage, yet with Simon, it felt effortless. As we glided across the floor, a wave of warmth enveloped me, and I found solace in his embrace. Reluctantly, we returned to the group after the song ended, but the memory lingered. The evening grew warmer as we indulged in a couple more drinks, and soon I found myself on the road heading home, the memory of the dance and the undeniable chemistry lingering in my thoughts. I knew I should have ended it, but the time spent with Simon was too enjoyable to resist. Dancing and a few lunches seemed innocent enough, or so I convinced myself. It wasn't until the 4th Friday gathering that things took a turn. Our department received an award for being top producers, each of us rewarded with a $100 bonus. We decided to celebrate at the bar, and after a couple of hours, only 4 of us remained. I had indulged a bit too much and realized I needed coffee before attempting to drive home. Simon offered to accompany me. En route to the restaurant, I stumbled on a carpet, and Simon swiftly caught me before I hit the ground. Holding me by the waist and chest, as he helped me upright, he asked, "Are you all right?" In a moment of impulse, I locked eyes with him and kissed him. It caught him off guard, but he responded almost instantly. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled back, my cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that," I stammered, feeling mortified. "Please forgive me." "Don't worry about it, Polly," Simon reassured me with a chuckle. "Consider it your thanks for saving your life. Now let's get some coffee into you," he suggested, leading me into the restaurant. The following week, I kept my distance from Simon as much as possible. I made sure to be busy during lunchtime and avoided stopping by for happy hour the next Friday. It had been a terrible mistake, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of arousal every time I thought about being in Simon's arms. However, despite her resolution, 2 weeks later, Polly found herself back at happy hour. With Fred not expected back until around 8:30, she arranged to have dinner and drinks with a few of her colleagues. Curiously, everyone seemed to have excuses for leaving early. until it was just Polly and Simon remaining by 6:30. "Shall we grab something to eat?" Simon suggested to Polly. As the music began to play, Polly seized the opportunity and invited Simon to dance. To her surprise, the evening unfolded with 4 slow songs played consecutively, and they danced every one. With each step, Polly felt her heart pounding against her chest, finding solace in Simon's embrace. Before she knew it, they found themselves in the backseat of Simon's car, where they indulged in everything but intercourse. Time slipped away, and it was almost 8 o'clock when they finally realized. Straightening her dress and hair, Polly exchanged one final kiss with Simon before heading to her car. Despite the gravity of her actions, Polly found herself devoid of shame. It wasn't until she reunited with her husband and children that the weight of her guilt began to settle in. That night, Fred desired her, but Polly couldn't bear to meet his gaze, let alone engage in intimacy. After a lengthy shower, she slipped into bed, seeking solace in Fred's embrace for the remainder of the night. Aware of the danger she was playing with, Polly couldn't resist the allure of her forbidden liaison. They began sneaking around during lunch breaks, the thrill of secrecy adding to the intensity of their encounters. A week later, Simon revealed that he had booked a room for Friday night at the Best Western, in anticipation of their rendezvous. We parted ways at the bar, agreeing to reconvene in the hotel corridor. "Are you sure about this?" Simon questioned, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I'm not entirely certain, but let's not linger in the hallway," Polly replied, urgency creeping into her tone. Within moments of entering the room, their restraint dissolved, and they found themselves tearing off each other's clothes in a frenzy of desire. Polly returned home 45 minutes before Fred and the kids were due back. They met twice more before Polly fell ill, attributing it to what she thought was the flu. When Carol suggested she might be pregnant, panic set in, and Polly rushed to the doctor. She couldn't fathom the results indicating pregnancy. After all, Simon always used protection, and Fred had undergone a vasectomy. As she stared at the test results, Polly realized she was in a dire situation, trapped in more ways than one. Sitting alone in the kitchen, she awaited Fred's return, knowing she had to break the news to him. Little did she know, her world was about to shatter into pieces. The end of a marriage. Fred sought retribution from both Polly and Simon. He demanded Simon leave town, never to return, so he wouldn't have to endure the sight of him again. As for Polly, Fred harbored a deep desire to see her suffer for tearing apart their once happy family. With his unmarried sister, Melissa, moving in to assist him in raising their 2 daughters, Fred faced the daunting task of navigating the complexities of female adolescence without a clue of where to begin. Despite the challenges ahead, Fred drew strength from the unwavering support of his parents, knowing that they would weather this storm together. On Sunday, Fred gathered his daughters and Melissa, gently explaining the turmoil between him and their mother. He reassured them that they could still see their mother whenever they wished, though she wouldn't be living with them anymore. Tears were shed, but a comforting bowl of ice cream helped soothe their emotions. By Tuesday, Polly had been served with divorce papers. Despite her persistent attempts to reach out, Fred remained resolute in his silence. Even Melissa's efforts to convey the finality of the situation fell on deaf ears. Fred took decisive action, canceling all shared financial arrangements and removing Polly from his insurance, 401, and other accounts. However, Fred allowed Polly to see the children on Wednesday. Melissa accompanied them to Polly's parents' house, providing a supportive presence during their visit. The next time Fred encountered Polly was during their meeting with the lawyers in the attorney's office, where the dissolution of their marriage would be legally formalized. Polly's lawyer launched into a series of demands, prompting Fred to rise and prepare to exit. "We've just begun. Where are you going?" the lawyer inquired. "I'll say this once," Fred replied in a low voice. "The terms stand as they are. Polly will have visitation rights, but physical custody will be mine. I refuse to subject my children to the birth of her illegitimate child conceived with another man. Challenge me on this or anything else, and I won't hesitate to expose the truth about my soon-to-be ex-wife. So I suggest you carefully consider your next move before speaking again." Following a brief recess to calm tensions, the proceedings resumed. Polly, tearfully, conceded to Fred's terms, and they all proceeded to sign the documents. "I'm truly sorry, Fred. I don't know how I allowed this to happen. I did love you," Polly sobbed. "I suppose not enough," Fred replied coolly. As he exited, Fred glanced back at Polly. "Since you conceived a child at a team-building seminar, perhaps you can claim it as a work-related injury and seek compensation," he remarked with a wry chuckle before walking away for the final time. The second story. I stood concealed in the dimly lit corner of the ballroom, observing the couple as they gracefully moved across the dance floor. Their gaze was locked, lost in each other's eyes. With each sway, the woman's chest rose and fell, pressed tightly against her partner's broad frame. They'd epitomized elegance in motion. He moved like an athlete, and she followed his lead flawlessly. All eyes were fixed on them, drawn by the magnetic connection they shared. There was a bond between them, though perhaps not love. It was stronger than mere friendship. Her honey blonde hair flowed softly, mirroring the gentle movements of the tide as she remained pressed against him, held tightly by the handsome man. Normally, I might have been envious of their connection, but the woman in his arms was my wife of 11 years, dancing with her boss. Instead of envy, I felt a surge of anger and humiliation. This wasn't our first time attending her company's annual awards banquet. We'd been to 8 others over the years, and everyone knew she was my wife. I could sense people scanning the room for me, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. After 3 dances, they left the floor, joining colleagues at a table in the center of the room. I watched as she looked at him with the same bedroom eyes that were once reserved for me. Though I hadn't seen those eyes recently, the disgust inside me only grew. The recurring thought haunted me. It's just a matter of time. Our marriage was teetering on the edge of collapse, the kettle of our relationship about to boil over. I struggled to make sense of the conflicting emotions within me: fear, hate, and resentment mingled with memories of love, respect, and trust for my wife. It felt like I was fighting a losing battle, trying to hold onto something slipping away. With a heavy heart, I admitted defeat. I had invested months of effort into repairing our bond. I planned romantic evenings, took on extra chores, and tried to engage in meaningful conversations, only to be met with her retreating further into her shell. Flowers, notes, and heartfelt gestures ended up discarded or ignored. I even sent flowers to her workplace, unsure if they ever reached her. What else is there left but to wait? I pondered. Pushing aside these thoughts, I returned to the makeshift bar in the corner and struck up a conversation with Batty, one of Penny's old work friends. "Enjoying yourself?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "I always love these annual parties. Harry's a big fan of the free drinks," she replied, raising her glass with a smirk. "Same here. By the way, I haven't seen Julian's wife tonight. Did she come?" "Oh, didn't Penny tell you? Julian served her with divorce papers today. Seems she wasn't fulfilling her wifely duties." Batty was at that perfect level of tipsiness, where words flowed without much filter. I seized the opportunity, not expecting disappointment. "No, probably not, especially on a Friday night. We rushed straight here after work. Didn't get a chance to catch up," I smoothly lied. We had actually taken the afternoon off to prepare, and she could have easily mentioned it during that time, but she chose not to. Refilling my Captain and diet, I grabbed a glass of white wine for Penny and made my way over to where she and Julian were standing, deep in conversation, oblivious to my approach. "Penny, I got you a glass of wine," I said, offering it to her. She jumped slightly, clearly startled. "Oh, you surprised me," she exclaimed, taking the glass. "Thanks, dear." The awkwardness grew thicker as we lingered there. Most guests suddenly found intense interest in the tablecloth or distant corners of the room, avoiding eye contact with me. Some stared, likely pondering my thoughts and level of obliviousness. A young man, about 25, even smirked at me before quickly looking away when our eyes met. It was nearing 1 a.m., and many guests had already left the ballroom, but Penny seemed unwilling to part from her conversation with Julian. "We should probably head home, honey. I still need to drop the babysitter off, and we promised her we wouldn't be out past 2 tonight," I interjected, aware that I was interrupting Penny's time with Julian. Yeah, okay. I guess it's time to go. I'll see you on Monday, she replied with a smile. There was a collective sigh of relief from those around us, signaling that the awkwardness was nearly over. Julian, good to see you, I said, extending my hand. We shook hands, his grip tighter than necessary, a clear attempt to assert dominance. He was slightly taller than me, but I outweighed him with a small paunch to prove it. I applied a bit more pressure than usual, locking eyes with him, detecting deception and smugness in his gaze. Finally, he released my hand, bidding us good night. I waved at the remaining guests as we left the room and headed for the car. We drove home in silence, though Penny's smile made her look radiant. Once home, Penny went to check on Mia, our 9-year-old daughter, while I paid Shirley and prepared to take her home. Upon my return, I found Penny already in bed, fast asleep. I checked on Mia, used the bathroom, and retired to the spare room to sleep. My eyes closed with the image of the ceiling in my mind as I drifted into a restless sleep, mentally preparing for the day ahead. I woke up early on Saturday morning, finding Mia already in the family room watching her shows. I gave her a little wave as I stopped in the doorway. Have you had breakfast yet? Yep, she replied, waving her spoon in the air, splattering drops of milk onto the carpet. Okay, be quiet, Mom's still asleep, and I have work to do in my office, okay. I whispered to Mia. Okay, Dad, she replied a little too loudly, and I chuckled. Well, that didn't work. Around 8:30, I dialed my lawyer's cell, knowing he worked from home on Saturday mornings. Morning, Grant. Thomas Gray here, I greeted. Good morning, Tom. I take it this isn't a cheerful call. He responded, already anticipating the answer. That's correct. It's time to put the plan in motion. Found out that Julian served his wife yesterday. Do we know if Penny has seen a lawyer yet? I don't think so, but I'll give the sleaze a call and make sure, Grant replied. I'll meet you in half an hour at the coffee house. You can sign and date the forms, and my assistant will notarize them. We'll file first thing Monday morning and have her served at lunch. Sounds good to me. See you shortly, I agreed. I arrived early at the coffee shop, offering a weak smile to the cute barista as I collected my order. Finding a comfortable chair by the fireplace, I let my mind wander. Never did I imagine I'd be divorcing the love of my life. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when you realize your comfortable life is ending, but I can get pretty close. It was a traffic ticket, one of those automatic red light camera finds. You know, where they capture a picture of the driver's face, the car's license plate, and the date and time. That was the tipping point. I stumbled upon the ticket while sorting through the mail. I chuckled, knowing immediately it was Penny's. She always pushed those lights when she was in a rush. Opening it, I planned to quietly pay it without mentioning it to her. Confronting her about it wouldn't lead to anything good. There in the photo of the driver was Penny, and next to her, the shoulder and arm of a man. His face wasn't visible, but I knew who it was. It could have been innocent, lunch, a meeting, anything. I checked the date and timestamp, March 5th. Something about that date didn't sit right with me. It wasn't that long ago. I scrolled through my phone and found our text messages from the 5th. Penny at 11:19, dropping by Batty's after work to pick up clothes for Mia. I remember thinking it wasn't unusual. Batty's daughter was a couple years older, and we get cute things from them, though I thought Batty usually brought them to work. Still, my radar wasn't beeping. Tom, don't worry, do you want me to make dinner? Penny, yes. Tom, what time should I expect you? Penny, at 6, we can chat for a minute. Tom, all right, have fun. Penny, thanks, we will. That woman, I thought, checking the intersection on Google Maps. It was on the opposite end of town from where Batty lived, but still, it could be innocent, right? Then I started connecting the dots. Since late November, Penny had been distant. Throughout the holidays, we argued over trivial matters. By January, she avoided holding my hand while shopping or walking. Our conversations dwindled to work or Mia. We stopped discussing our dreams, family vacations, or our future. I've had a trust fund since childhood. My great-grandfather invested in undeveloped land in the Pacific Northwest, logging and profiting from it. As the local city expanded, he sold parcels back, benefiting me with a hefty sum. It grew further upon my grandfather's passing. I never needed to dip into it since my family was self-sufficient. The balance grew with interest. After my father's death, inheriting his estate, I merged his trust with mine. With our accumulated wealth, the three of us were close to being set for life, but Penny and I continued working to grow our capital in preparation for retirement. I was encouraged to obtain a prenuptial agreement to protect the fund when Penny and I got married. Every few years, we updated the prenup and our wills. One thing that remained constant was the standard "what's mine is mine," and "what's yours is yours" divorce clause. We did add a provision for Mia to receive an education in the event of my death or if we divorced. Of course, there were provisions concerning the circumstances surrounding my death. Naturally, Penny wouldn't receive anything if she had a hand in my demise. Because of this, I had access to a family lawyer and accounting services for years. I contacted my lawyer and got the name of the best local divorce attorney. I arranged a meeting with him by the end of the week to explore my options. Since we had a solid prenup, he wasn't worried about any financial issues. I explained that I wasn't ready to take any drastic actions at this point, just wanted to know what steps to take next. "Well, Tom, we could have a private investigator look into what's going on and see if there's anything to worry about. Unfortunately, all my investigators are busy right now. It would be several weeks before they could invest any time in your case," Grant Stewart explained. "I really don't want to wait. I'm already losing sleep over this. Are there any other options?" I asked. "Well, there is one. He's trying to get things started, but few really trust him. We call him David the Sleaze," Grant explained. "He's an ex-cop who was retired due to a history of complaints and some questionable activity. He could get started right away, but I don't know if I would recommend a lasting relationship with him." "Why do you call him the Sleaze?" I asked, laughing. "I want things legal, so if we do find something, we'll be on solid ground if we have to move forward." "Totally, he's legal. He has a habit of obtaining detailed pictures, videos, emails, and phone conversations that, let's just say, walk a fine line of being admissible in court. But I'm told what he finds is solid proof of infidelity one way or the other." "Okay, as long as he's legal. We could always pay him off and switch to a more reputable PI in a couple of weeks," I suggested. "Do you think he can start today?" "I'll give him a call and find out. I'll be your go-between here at the office. I'll let you know later today." "Sounds good, thank you." I filled out a bunch of documents for both the lawyer and the sleaze, connected him with my accountant, and left a retainer from my personal account. Penny didn't have access to it, so she wouldn't know what I was up to. I didn't want to startle her, especially if I was wrong, and it's just a rough patch in our marriage. While this was going on, I decided to try to repair my relationship with my wife. My life experiences have told me that people don't just change and do uncharacteristic things unless there is a catalyst. Since I didn't know what that was for my wife, and I didn't know if we were past the point of no return, I decided to make sure I was taking care of business as a husband. I picked up my game and did my best to make sure she felt loved and valued as an equal partner in our relationship. I doted on her and made it my goal to be the husband that all her friends were jealous of. At every turn, I was met with rejection, and it became evident that we had already reached the point of no return. One Thursday afternoon, I was summoned back to Grant's office to receive what the sleaze had found. I was shown hours of footage showing them meeting, sleeping together, and playing the part of a happy couple. There were photos, phone call recordings, and personal email exchanges. I was both impressed and repulsed by the sleaze, agreeing that his nickname was well earned. Sitting there, I was devastated. Never would I have imagined that she would have an affair with Julian Morgan. I suppose I could see why she would be drawn to Julian. He was tall, handsome, and fit. He was sophisticated and climbing the ladder both professionally and personally. Taking over Penny's department about a year ago, as his personal assistant, Penny worked closely with Julian, giving him ample opportunity to worm his way into her life. Julian had been a college baseball star, and the only thing that stopped him from going pro was a shoulder injury in his senior year. Who wouldn't be impressed by him? I just never thought Penny would let him come between us. It was all too much to bear. I couldn't breathe, my chest tightened, my vision blurred, and I felt like I was going to faint. I pushed my chair back, placing my head between my knees, trying to focus on my breathing. In, and out, until my head cleared. The feeling of loss and emptiness was indescribable. I had just lost my best friend, my confidant, my lover, and the mother of my child. In that moment, I couldn't see a way out of this, and then the sleaze piled on more. He played a recording from the day before, explaining why he wanted us all to be together. Penny. Really? You love me? Her voice held excitement. Julian, yes, my darling, you are the most perfect woman. I love you, and I want us to be a family. Penny, you mean you, me, and Mia? Julian, of course. Penny, what about Tom and, Nora? Julian, we'll divorce them, you'll get Mia, and we'll live as a happy family. There was a pause in the conversation, and I imagined Penny was processing the bomb her lover just dropped. Julian, you do love me, don't you, Penny? Penny, yes, of course I do. I never gave much thought to leaving Tom, is all. Julian, well, give it some thought. He could never give you what I can. You will be the belle of every ball, part of high society. Go places and see things that loser could never afford. I could hear the contempt in his voice and imagined the disdain on his face. Penny, it would kill him to lose Mia. We are his world. Julian, I'll be 10 times the father than that loser ever could be. In a year, she won't even want to go and see him. Penny, why do you hate him so much? What has he done to you? Her voice carried concern. To be honest, I wanted to know as well. Julian, he doesn't deserve you, Penny. That loser has no ambition, no drive to be anything more than what he is today. A drone making someone else rich. Penny, you do know he's a plant manager, right? He oversees 400 people, and their plant has the highest production rates and revenue per square foot of any in the company. I felt a flicker of pride at Penny's defense, though I would have preferred this conversation to happen anywhere other than a hotel room. Julian, he's weak, a weak beta who had no drive or ambition in school, and he hasn't even earned his MBA. He's served his time. I can tear him down any day of the week. Penny, Julian, don't think you're that much better than Tom. He's not weak. You don't know about his younger days. He ran with some tough crowds and is skilled with guns. He almost went down a bad path until he decided to go to school. That's why he didn't go to college for a few years after high school. She sounded like she was boasting now. Penny, he's stronger and tougher than you give him credit for. Please promise me you won't get physical with him. I wouldn't want either of you hurt, him for Mia's sake and you for mine. But I'm not in love with him anymore. I wish I were, but you've replaced him as my man, my love. She paused, contemplating. How would this work, and when? Julian, we'll divorce them at the same time. I've got a few things to get in order before I serve Nora, but with her psychiatric issues and the fact that she and I haven't had anything for a year, it wouldn't be a problem. I'll split everything 50-50, she won't hardly contest. Penny, okay, but you have to file on Nora before I'll even see a lawyer, she was defiant. I figured she wanted to hedge her bets and not risk losing her comfortable life, even for her true love, her man. Julian, deal. Now come here, woman. I asked for the tape to be turned off at this point. I didn't need to hear any more. I looked over at Grant and said, how do I deal with this? You strike first, Tom. But what if she changes her mind? They rarely change, Mr. Gray. I'm afraid they've reached a point where nothing you do or say will make them stop or repent. I got my first good look at David, nicknamed the Sleaze. He was in his 30s, clean-cut, athletically built, and his suit fit him well, completely different from what I had imagined. He was respectful, and he was probably right, I thought. I started to see him as David, not just the Sleaze. I felt like he was genuinely on my side. Even though I was paying him, he seemed to care and was disgusted by what he had seen and heard from those two. And would you still want her after knowing what you do now? David added. You're probably right, David. Turning to Grant, I said, Grant, give me a day or two to decide, and I'll call you, okay? Sounds good, Tom. Can I start working on the framework of the documents, and we can fill in the details later or scrap the whole thing if you want? Yes, let's do that. As David followed me out, he handed me his card. That has my personal number on it, Mr. Gray, in case you ever need me on the side. Please, David, call me Tom. Thank you. Tom, I know some people who could help you get revenge if you decide to go that route. I mean, they call me David the Sleaze for a reason, he stated with a smile. Laughing, I said, good to know, David. I'll let you know if I need that kind of help. Seriously, though, thank you for the offer. I don't think I could do that to Penny, but I like knowing I have a friend if I decide to go down that path. David smiled at me and waved as he headed for his car. All weekend long, I dwelled on my choices, barely able to concentrate on anything else. It seemed Penny hadn't even noticed I was deciding the fate of our family. It occurred to me that she had already made that decision for all of us. I grappled with feelings of doubt, anger, fear, and frustration. The most painful part was the humiliation and loss of my perceived manhood. My self-identity was wrapped up in my work and my family. Who would I be without my family? I wondered. I worry about Mia and how she would navigate this next chapter. The thought of that arrogant bastard raising my daughter irritated me. I even had flashes of him walking her down the aisle at her wedding. My emotions and thoughts were a chaotic mess. No matter how much booze I poured over them, clarity eluded me until Sunday morning. Sitting on the back deck nursing a hell of a headache, it dawned on me that this was probably going to happen, no matter how much I fought it. I had already lost my wife. I could see the contempt in her eyes. I had already lost my family. What mattered now was on whose terms and under what conditions I would lose everything. Then an old saying struck me: lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Well, I wasn't going to step aside, and I certainly wasn't going to follow those cheaters. So I had only one choice: to lead. Monday morning, I rang up Grant. Grant, Tom Gray here. Good morning, Tom. Any closer to a decision? Yes, I have. I want you to complete all the required documents, including only the legal pics David obtained. Split everything 50-50ths. I paused. Do you want to sell the house? Yes, we took a low-interest loan from my trust fund to buy it, so we've been paying ourselves all this time. We'll split any equity we get, but I'll recover the full loan amount and interest we've paid over the years. It's a win for me, I explained. Also, please add $200,000 for Penny out of my trust. Consider it payment for services rendered. She might be more amiable if she knows she isn't walking out of this completely broke. I want primary custody of Mia. I know it'll be tough, but maybe David can find some dirt on our boy Julian that would make him look less like a suitable father to a young girl. I heard he was a first-class frat boy in college. Maybe he got a little fresh with some of his conquests. Sick David on him, please. Have a backup plan for Mia. If we get too much pushback on the primary custody thing, write up the most generous shared custody plan you've ever heard of. I stopped for a second to let Grant catch up. Also, I want to sue Julian for alienation of love and affection and find a way to get his wife Nora involved in the mess. I want her to be aware of what's going on in a completely legal, above-board kind of way. Speaking of her, please create another divorce setup for adultery and have it ready for her. I'll pay her fees. I think she should get what's coming to her and make it ugly. We can arrange for both of them to be served in the alienation suite, but you should know it might not lead anywhere. I'll also need her to sign a contract with me. I can start the paperwork, but without her consent or information, there isn't much else I can do, Grant explained. I understand. I just want to stir things up a bit. And while you're at it, I want to sue Penny's company for allowing her to sleep with her boss. I doubt they have a morality clause in their handbook, but it must be shady for any company to allow this to happen under their watch, especially with him being her direct supervisor. I know it probably won't lead anywhere, but let's shake that tree and see what falls out, Tom replied. Okay, Tom. This is going to get expensive, and then it'll escalate from there. You're talking about a lot of man-hours, and if it's contested, even more, Grant warned. I understand. It's just money, and at this point, I'll empty my trust if I have to make sure those two don't profit more than they're due. As my daddy used to say, anytime you get a lawyer involved, you're just negotiating how much it's going to cost. I've got it, so I might as well use it, Tom said with determination. Grant chuckled at Tom's snide comment about lawyers as he replied, well, he sounds like he was a smart man. You know you don't have to give her any money from your trust. Your prenup is airtight. I know, Grant, but I've been thinking about this all weekend. I figured if I don't leave her destitute, she might be more willing to go along with my demands. And she kind of deserves it. She's worked hard and helped me protect it from unnecessary draws. Both of us were counting on it as our old age nest egg. I was thinking it might give her an edge over Julian, so when she finds herself out on her own, she doesn't have to rely on him as much. She deserves more, but there's no way I'm giving that cheating bastard Julian anything more of my life than he's already taken. I mean, my wife should be enough. I felt the rage bubbling as I spoke, just thinking about Julian taking over the life that was supposed to be mine. Despite Penny not returning the favor, I always considered myself fair in my dealings. I wanted to ensure I treated Penny fairly. My solace was that I was sure Mia would approve of my actions later when she understood how our family fell apart. One last thing, Grant, don't file yet. I want to have everything done, I's dotted and T's crossed and ready to roll. I want to wait for her to make the first move. This will give me more time with Mia in our family home. I know there will come a time when I need to pull the trigger, but I want it to be at the last moment when I can't hang with it anymore. Got it. We can leave it undated and not notarized until you're ready. I work on Saturday mornings from home, so if it falls apart on a weekend, you can give me a call. We still won't be able to file until Monday morning, but I can have somebody standing at the door when they open and have them served the same day. Good. It's a plan. We exchanged our goodbyes and hung up. I reached into my pocket, pulled out David's card, and dialed. David, Tom Gray, how are you? I asked. I'm good, he replied. Are you ready for some sleazy fun? Well, sort of, but I want you to wait for my word, okay? No problem, Tom. What are we talking about? Can we meet in person? Yep, give me an hour and I'll meet you at the Dunkin' on 6th. Sounds good, I replied. I was already waiting when he pulled into the lot. He grabbed some coffee and a snack before sitting down opposite me. I want you to put together the nasty file. Photos, video, recordings, everything you have. We need to find a way to get it to Nora Morgan anonymously, maybe email. No problem, I know a guy who works the dark web, David stated. Is that all? What about posting videos on websites or sending nasty messages to her parents or coworkers? He asked. Boy, he is sleazy, I thought. No, Penny will still have to be seen around town. I wouldn't want her so humiliated that she leaves town with Mia, and I still love the stupid bitch, even if she isn't in love with me anymore. I slipped an envelope with $5,000 cash in it across the table. This should get you started, but let me know if you need more. David thumbed the cash and looked up at me. $3,000 would get this done. He may be sleazy, but at least he is honest. Keep the rest as a retainer. I may need your expertise later. Don't forget, sit on the file till I call you. I want them caught off guard, and I have my reasons for letting them make the first move. Oh, we should also get an idea of what issues his wife has. Her medical history might play into anything we decide later. Is that possible? I asked, smiling at David, who returned the smile and nodded. And did Grant ask you to look into Julian's college days? I'm looking for something I can use against them if we fight over custody. David nodded again and made a couple of notes in his notebook. We finished our coffees and chatted about his career as a cop and people we might know. After shaking hands, we parted ways. That was 3 months ago. I was brought back to reality as Grant arrived, followed shortly after by his assistant and David. So, it's go time, huh? Grant asked as everyone seated around us. Yep, sounds like it. David, do we know if Penny has been to a lawyer yet? Not that I'm aware of. I did a quick search of her emails after Grant called and didn't see anything mentioned. I'll take a closer look today and we'll know by Monday morning, David stated. La la la, I didn't hear that, Grant exclaimed, plugging his ears with his index fingers. I can't know these things, David. David smiled and nodded, giving me a sly wink. What about Julian? Any dirty laundry? I asked, hopefully. Yeah, he was under investigation with his fraternity, something to do with drugs. I got copies of everything and have already given them to Grant, David replied. Grant looked up and nodded his confirmation, adding, I've got them if we need them for the custody hearing. Pulling out the documents we had been working on for the past few months, he showed me where to sign. As I signed, Grant's assistant notarized, and I spoke to the group. David, could you please find out who Nora Morgan hired as her lawyer and inform Grant? Then Grant, if the lawyer seems competent, could you share our legal files with them? I addressed the group. What if the lawyer isn't any good? Grant raised a concern. If that's the case, we'll figure out a way to get Nora in touch with you, but I'd prefer to handle it properly. David, let's avoid sending her anything overly aggressive. David nodded, sipping his coffee, while Grant glanced between us. Grant, can I pick up the documents on Monday afternoon? I'll deliver them to Penny myself and inform her of the situation. Then could you arrange for official serving on Tuesday? Grant nodded in understanding, instructing his assistant about the filings and preparing for Tuesday's serving. And then I'd like Julian and their company to be served on Tuesday afternoon. I suppose we can drop Nora from the alienation suit since she'll be informed soon. Grant, you can share the file with Nora's lawyer on Monday afternoon, provided he doesn't interfere with my discussion with Penny Monday night. I leaned back, sighing. By Wednesday, things should be well underway. Tom, have you thought about where Penny will stay Monday night? Grant asked. Not until now. Any issue with her staying at the house for a few days? No, as long as you don't end up with a restraining order and she agrees. I wouldn't recommend sharing a bed. Legally, it might not be an issue, but it could be uncomfortable for you. I'd be worried about what a less than ethical lawyer might do with that information, Grant cautioned. Okay, I'll give her a week to find a place. We're not romantically involved right now. I don't see a problem. Oh, did you mean actually sleeping in the same bed? But our documents do grant me temporary control of the house and Mia, right? I clarified. Yes, until her lawyer files a motion and reverses it all, or until we come to an agreement. I meant actually sharing a bed. It might give a strange impression in the legal documents, Grant clarified. No worries, we're not sleeping together now. Hey David, what did you find out about Nora's medical situation? She's been battling depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the medication killed her libido and Mr. Wonderful went looking. David seemed about to add more but stopped himself, remembering Julian was involved. I smiled at him. I don't suppose we need to know how you found this out. David just smiled and shook his head, while Grant pretended to be shocked. Grant, is that a concern for us? I asked. Not immediately, but it might come into play later, especially regarding custody arrangements. We could include it as a condition in the final draft to ensure Mia is never left alone with her. Grant was jotting down notes on his iPad as he spoke. Okay, I don't see it being an issue since they don't have kids and they're divorcing as well. Better to be safe than sorry later. I winced inwardly. Divorce was a nasty business. We chatted a bit more before each of us ended our strategy session and went about our day. I felt a bit down for the rest of the weekend. The tasks I had to carry out on Monday weighed heavily on me. Not that I expected Penny to notice. On Sunday, I phoned my aunt and arranged for her to pick up Mia from school on Monday and have her stay overnight so I could have a discussion with Penny about some important family matters. They lived on a farm outside of town, and Mia always enjoyed spending time there, playing with their dogs and helping with the animals. My aunt would drop Mia off at school on Tuesday, and I planned to break the news to Mia that evening. I informed Mia of the arrangements, and though she was excited, she seemed a bit puzzled why it was on a Monday night. I brushed it off, telling her that Mom and Dad needed some private time to discuss things. She reluctantly accepted it. I had been sleeping in the spare room more frequently, and once again, Penny didn't mention it. She seemed relieved when she saw me heading there at bedtime. I lay in bed on Sunday night, going over my checklist and reviewing my plan, eventually drifting off to sleep in the early hours of the morning. Bright and early on Monday morning, I called my VP of operations and explained that I needed the week off. I also contacted my assistant and senior production manager to brief them on anything they needed to know while I was away. Around 1 p.m., I stopped by Grant's office and found David there as well. The stack of papers on the desk and the buzz of activity in the office indicated that everyone had been busy. "Tom, we filed at the courthouse this morning, and here are Penny's documents as you requested. We've also arranged for the official service at your home around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Does that work for you?" Grant asked as he handed me the envelopes. "Yeah, that should work. I'm going to suggest to Penny that she takes the rest of the week off. I'll let you know if that changes," I replied. All right. Grant paused briefly to gather his thoughts before continuing. "David found Nora's lawyer, and he's rather competent. I've sent him our files, and he seemed eager. At first glance, it seems he'll be suggesting a countersuit for adultery and a much larger share of their assets than a 50-50 split. He's promised not to take any action until morning, so we're in the clear there." "All right, gentlemen, have we missed anything?" I asked, feeling a bit down. "It seems Penny has an appointment with her attorney next week, based on her calls and emails today. And Tom, please let me know if you need any further assistance, all right?" David asked discreetly, earning another sharp look from Grant, hinting at the confidential matters we were handling. "Okay, good. I'll do that, David, but I think we're fine," I replied, hoping I wouldn't need to get any deeper into this mess. It all depends on Penny and Julian now. I exited Grant's office and sent a text to Penny. "Penny, will you be home at a decent hour tonight?" 17:30. Why? What's up? "It's okay. I got a little distracted over the weekend and wanted to try and catch up on things today. I've arranged for Aunt Sally to come over to Mia's tonight and stay the night. Thought I'd bring some home-cooked food. Do you want some?" "That's nice. Chinese." "Sure. Dinner will be ready at 5:30. I felt pretty bad arranging things like this for her, but it's become somewhat of a habit lately. I hope she would just see it as me making an extra effort to be kind and loving." Monday night, 5:30. Penny arrived home around 5:15, and as she changed clothes, I set the table and prepared the food. Pouring a couple of glasses of wine, I sat at the table waiting for her. When she joined me, she took a long sip from her glass, and we began passing the dishes back and forth. We engaged in small talk as we ate, and she seemed unaware of what was about to happen. "How's the rest of your week looking?" I asked as our meal came to an end, and we picked at the remaining food on our plates. "Pretty light. Did you want to make plans?" she asked, giving me a sidelong glance. "No, I thought maybe you'd want to take the week off after our conversation," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Why would I do that?" "I know, Penny," I began, placing an envelope on the table in front of her. She looked down at it, then back up at me, taking a sip of her wine. "I know about Julian and your plans to file for divorce." She coughed, choking on her wine, and gave me a blank stare. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how I knew or what she could do to slow me down. "What divorce?" she finally managed to choke out. "The one you have a meeting with a lawyer about next week, and the one Julian already filed on Nora. I know you're in love with him and planning to take Mia and leave me." I opened the packet and slid some of the photos towards her. Her eyes widened, and she set her glass down to pick up the photos and look through them. I could see her eyes moisten, and she started to hiccup a little, a sign of her becoming over-emotional. "I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never meant for any of this to happen. I don't know what else to say." She trailed off, looking down at the table. "I know, Penny. I've known about your plans for months. I've had time to make some peace with it all. I'm greatly disappointed in you, and I'm extremely hurt." I paused for a moment, gathering my confidence and controlling the anger swelling inside me. "The only thing I want to know is, did I do something or not do something that drove you to Julian?" "Oh God, no," she exclaimed, meeting my gaze briefly before retreating to the table, perhaps out of guilt and shame. It just kind of happened. You haven't done. You didn't do anything to drive me away. You were a great husband and father. I just fell for him, she finally managed to say. I felt both disappointed and relieved. I couldn't help it if she simply fell out of love with me and decided to choose Julian. He had plenty of time to worm his way into her heart and push me out, and there was nothing I could do now to prevent it. Our marriage was dead, and all that was left was the paperwork. I pulled out the terms of the divorce and handed it to her. Here is the settlement I'm proposing. I've already filed, so you don't have to unless you disagree with what I'm asking for. The main points are, the prenup is in effect, so my trust is off the table. I suggest we sell any joint assets and split the proceeds 50-50, including the house. Since I filed first, I'm asking for full custody of Mia and minimal child support from you. You'll have generous visitation rights. Mia will stay on my insurance, but you'll need to get your own. You'll keep your 401k, any pre-marriage investments, and the inheritance from your mom. I don't want to take anything that's rightfully yours. We'll divide any investments we made together, and Mia and I will remain in the house until it's sold. I'm also releasing $200,000 from my trust for you to establish yourself. I suggest getting a prenup to safeguard it if you end up with Julian as planned. I don't want to see you lose anything. I want to ensure you can be independent since I'm not asking for spousal support. I paused, letting her absorb what I just outlined. I think I should have Mia. A girl needs her mother as she matures, she said flatly. I completely agree, but you can fulfill that remotely through visits and calls. Frankly, I don't trust Julian with our daughter. I know he plans on trying to turn her against me with gifts and his charm. Since he couldn't have his own child, he wants mine. I think I'm already being generous by allowing him to have my wife. He doesn't get my daughter too. I understand you'll want to negotiate custody. I suggest we let the lawyers handle it and try to be civil. I suggested, offering a peace gesture as I saw her face flushed during the discussion about Mia and Julian. He would never harm her, and if she's driven away, it'll be on you. Separating her from her mother is a good way to make that happen, she retorted. Well, either way, she stays with me until we figure something else out. You can stay here in the master bedroom for a few nights or the week until you sort things out. Penny, I still love you with all my heart. I thought we were going to conquer the world together, but you're tearing me apart, and I don't know what else to do. My world is crumbling, and I'm trying hard to be fair and kind. I really don't want to hurt you the same way you've hurt me. But trust me, if you go nuclear or let Julian get involved, I'll respond in kind. And darling, I have resources you both lack, I said, my tone now tinged with anger. She knew I could play hardball if pushed. She'd seen it before. So please, let's put this on hold and let the lawyers handle it. I want us to be polite and courteous whenever we meet. It's important for Mia to see us getting along. I plan for both of us to be deeply involved in our daughter's life, I pleaded. I really didn't want this to become a bitter battle. I'm off the rest of the week, and according to the law, you have to be officially served. That's scheduled here at the house for 9 a.m. I didn't want you embarrassed at work, so you might consider calling in and taking a few days off as well. I know it will be tense for both of us being home, but I thought we could sit down with Mia tomorrow night or keep her home Wednesday to explain what's happening. Thoughts? Penny had stopped eating altogether by now and looked a little pale and sickly. I think the full effects of her actions were finally settling in on her. She only had herself to blame. I was blissfully unaware until she set off this storm. She looked up at me, resembling a fish out of water, and then said, "Okay, Tom. You've obviously planned well and got ahead of us. I'm not sure how, but you did. I'll call into work first thing and at least be home through Wednesday. Do you think Sally can keep her tomorrow night as well? Maybe just keep her out of school tomorrow and bring her home Wednesday morning so we can talk." I proudly introduced him as David the Sleuth, I said, noticing her confused expression. My private investigator, David, uncovered this after I sensed something was off. I'll call Aunt Sally right away. That sounds like a good plan. Penny nodded slightly as I mentioned David, then picked up the papers I handed her and bid me good night. It seemed she needed some time alone to process everything. I watched as she headed into the master bedroom, locking the door behind her. That was fine, as I had already moved most of my belongings to the spare room earlier. I phoned my aunt and explained that we were dealing with a family matter, and she kindly agreed to keep Mia for another night, dropping her off mid-morning on Wednesday. I also spoke to Mia and informed her she wouldn't be going to school the next day. She was confused but accepted it. I assured her that Mom and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I tidied up and prepared for bed, I could hear Penny murmuring behind the closed door, likely on the phone, and later heard soft sobs as she mourned the end of our marriage. Tuesday. I could hear Penny moving around early in the morning, getting ready for her day as she descended the stairs in casual attire. At exactly 9, she opened the door to accept her official documents and package, except for the photos and transcripts, which she must have reviewed last night in her room. After grabbing her keys and purse, she hurried out without mentioning her destination, but I assumed she was meeting Julian, her lawyer, or someone else for support. Later in the afternoon, Grant called me to inform that both Julian and their company had been served with our lawsuits. Apparently, Julian was also served with Nora's countersuit around the same time and was visibly upset. Grant advised me to keep a low profile and be cautious, as the server mentioned Julian had made threats towards me. I never thought Julian would act so recklessly, considering he was getting what he wanted. Nevertheless, as a precaution, I retrieved my .45 ACP 1911 from my gun safe, ensured it was loaded and ready, and discreetly tucked it beside me in my chair as I watched TV. A few hours later, I was at the sink when I spotted a black BMW screeching to a stop in my driveway, with an enraged Julian jumping out and retrieving a baseball bat from his trunk. Sensing danger, I quickly retreated to my chair where my cell phone lay, ready to dial 911. With the door securely locked, I felt a sense of safety. I called 911 and informed the operator that there was a man in my driveway with a baseball bat, my wife's boyfriend. Units were dispatched. Just as I made the call, I heard another vehicle pull up outside, likely Penny, given the commotion I could hear. Then, amidst the chaos, there was a sharp yelp. My heart raced as the front door shattered under a solid kick, and an enraged Julian barged in, shouting at the top of his lungs, "You bastard! You got me fired and ruined my divorce." His fury was palpable, but I remained calm, my hand instinctively reaching for the grip of the pistol. Feeling its weight reassured me. Julian swung the bat wildly, his words filled with venom. Outside, Penny's cries grew louder, pleading with him to stop. "I took your wife, and now I will kill you and take your daughter too, you asshole." I let Julian advance a few more feet before I drew my pistol from the seat cushion. His eyes narrowed with rage, but his judgment was clouded. With the bat raised above his head, he was no threat from 25 feet away. The crack of the cartridge in the chamber was deafening. I fired 3 bullets, and they reached the target. Julian fell down and didn't move again. Amidst the chaos, the screams echoed in my ears, amplified by the ringing from the gunshot. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the responding officers' shouts became audible. Uncertain of the gravity of the situation, they swiftly placed Penny on her stomach and handcuffed her near the open door. Her cries persisted until she began to vomit, purging whatever she had ingested or tasted. Still reeling from the shock of the unfolding events, I finally focused on the gun aimed at my face and the officer's frantic orders. "Freeze! Drop the gun," he commanded. Coming to my senses a bit, I complied, letting go of my weapon and following his instructions. I lowered myself to the floor. Epilogue. The following weeks were a whirlwind of chaos and stress. Julian was pronounced dead at the scene. Later, I found out from police reports and eyewitnesses that he had been served with my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife almost simultaneously. It didn't take him long to realize the photos came from me. Penny was beside him when he opened the envelope from his wife and confirmed she had the same set of photos. Moments later, they were both summoned to the VP's office, where they confessed their affair, unaware of the consequences. The executives, feeling the need to make a statement, promptly fired the managing director for engaging in an affair with a subordinate. In that moment, I became the embodiment of evil for Julian. He believed I needed to pay for standing up against him and thwarting his plans. Grabbing a souvenir bat from his office, he decided to come to my house. Penny spotted him through a second-floor conference room window and realized where he might be heading. She intercepted him in our driveway, attempting to calm him down before he could harm me. Of course, neither of them knew I had been forewarned of their arrival and was prepared. Penny ended up with a black eye when Julian pushed her aside while trying to force his way into our house. Thankfully, that was the extent of her physical injuries, but the emotional toll was immense. She suffered from nightmares for months, keeping several counselors busy. We spoke briefly a couple of times amidst the chaos of police interviews, legal proceedings, and court visits, but we never delved into a serious discussion about what happened in our house. Penny became a mere shadow of her former self, losing her husband, lover, and daughter within 24 hours to a heavy toll, and she never recovered. She stuck around for the divorce proceedings and maybe a month after they were finalized. She didn't hire a lawyer or contest anything. I easily gained custody of Mia. Surprisingly, she never claimed her share of the financial settlement. Grant held onto it for her, but eventually returned it to me a year later. She never returned to our home, opting to stay with friends and family until she vanished without a trace. Penny had a few supervised visits with Mia, but they were inconsistent. I made sure Mia was ready for every scheduled visit. Whether we had confirmation from Penny or not, she would only show up about every fourth time. I later learned that Penny had become addicted to painkillers and other prescribed narcotics, trying to cope and function as an adult. By the time she disappeared, she was unemployed, alone, and penniless. Neither Mia nor I, nor anyone she knew, had any contact information for Penny, and she never reached out again. We have no idea what became of her. We lost a wife and a mother. The house was sold, and Mia and I bought another one in her school district, trying to move forward with our lives. We both sought counseling after the traumatic events. I went for 6 months, but eventually had to push the hurt and pain aside and move on. I had a daughter to raise and a life to lead. Mia spent a few years in counseling on and off, dealing with her mother's reaction to the events and the abandonment, along with several other issues. It took me 3 years to feel ready to even consider dating again. Several months later, I met a wonderful woman named Lila. She was understanding and respectful of Mia's and my experiences. We took our time with dating, moving much slower than either of us would have preferred, but eventually we developed a physical relationship. About 16 months later, we got married. We raised Mia and Lila's daughter together as a family, but we didn't expand our family further. Over time, our lives stabilized and improved. Our only rough patches were during Mia's major life events, her high school and college graduations. Each time, I hired David to try and locate Penny, but every lead turned into a dead end. The prevailing belief was that she had likely died alone and troubled somewhere. It was a terrible ordeal, but we made the best of it and moved forward. I was grateful that I had the time to devise a plan of action and had the right people supporting me to see it through. The third story. It was just our 23rd anniversary, but I had hoped it would be special. Unfortunately, a last-minute business conference threw a wrench in the works. I packed for the 3 days in Baltimore and grabbed a quick bite before leaving. Michelle, I promise I'll make it up to you. Roberts insisted I attend this seminar. I looked over the agenda and didn't see anything particularly important, but he's the boss. Don't worry about it, Ryan. I'll get even when we go to Europe for the 25th. We can go somewhere nice this weekend when you get back. Michelle and I had been married since college, and we have 2 daughters, Haley and Ashley, who are both in college. I had been with Beeman's International for about 10 years and was doing well. I put in a lot of hours and traveled quite a bit. Michelle didn't seem to mind and found ways to occupy herself while I was away. Our marriage was good, and our intimate life was fine. Besides my demanding work schedule, everything seemed okay in my life. We socialized occasionally, mostly at office functions, but sometimes with friends in the neighborhood. The girls were both fairly independent and only relied on us for tuition and some spending money. They both worked while on campus. Michelle and I met, began dating, and marriage followed naturally. There was no whirlwind romance or storybook episodes, just a straightforward progression that might seem dull to some. While I was of average appearance, Michelle was quite attractive. I stood tall, a full head taller than Michelle, and she often wore heels to even things out when we went out together. Her dark brown hair was starting to show a few gray streaks, giving her a sophisticated look. She jogged about 3 times a week to maintain her weight, and she was undeniably a fine-looking woman whom any man would be proud to have by his side. I'll call you once I'm settled in and give you the room number. We'll likely be busy most of the afternoon and evening. They have some late scheduled activities. If it goes on too long, I won't call tonight, I told Michelle. Don't worry, Ryan. I have plenty to keep me occupied. The girls dropped off some laundry this weekend, and the new book club edition arrived yesterday. Don't fret about me. I'll see you on Friday evening, Michelle reassured me. After a quick kiss, I headed off to Baltimore, taking the back roads for the 3-hour drive. I despise the interstate. With the meeting starting after lunch, I had ample time to settle in. I called Michelle to let her know I had arrived safely. The frustrating part was that there was nothing new being presented. I had read the agenda beforehand, yet I still expected more. I couldn't understand why they had sent me to a conference that felt redundant. I was thoroughly irritated after the last session of the afternoon when they announced that we were all going out for a special celebration dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Despite there being 2 locations in Baltimore, they decided to take us to the one in Philly, where we had a corporate account. As we arrived in Philadelphia, the rain poured down. They had arranged 2 special tables for our group in a private meeting room. Given the prices they charge, I'm sure they didn't want a rowdy bunch disturbing the paying customers. After we all placed our orders, I excused myself to visit the men's room. The lighting in the restaurant was dim, but I could still spot my wife, Michelle, sitting in a secluded table with Patrick Roberts. She was impeccably dressed, as if she had gone to the salon. Michelle only does that for special occasions, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Then it hit me. Tonight was special because it was our wedding anniversary. As I stood across the room, everything became much clearer. Now I understood why I was constantly on overnight business trips and attending seminars. I had no idea Michelle was so close to Patrick Roberts, especially considering he was married. We had never socialized with Patrick and his wife, and I didn't even know when or how they managed to start a relationship. At this point, it didn't matter anymore. It seemed like our trip to Europe would never happen. The restaurant exuded elegance, and I was keen not to disturb anyone's meal, so I opted for discretion. I made my way to the corner of the room near the restroom hallway, affording me a view of both Michelle and the conference room. I had assumed Michelle would silence her cell phone given the circumstances, but she didn't. "Hi, honey, it's Ryan." I tried the house phone, but got no answer. Michelle attempted to use her cell phone discreetly, a challenging task in such a busy and upscale dining spot. "Sorry, Ryan. I'm in the basement and missed the call. I thought you weren't going to ring. What's up?" Patrick's expression turned sour as Michelle attempted to keep her voice down. "Just wanted to let you know I'm on my way home. The conference ended early. I should be there in about an hour. See you soon." "What? Hold on a minute, Ryan. The washer is acting up." Michelle quickly covered the phone with her hand, conversing with Patrick urgently. Her facial expressions and hand gestures betrayed the urgency of the situation. Patrick swiftly dialed a number on his phone, his actions lightning fast. Meanwhile, across the room, the conference director answered his own cell phone. Patrick's conversation with the person on the other end of the line was brief. Fear flashed across Michelle's face as Patrick relayed what he just heard. Slowly, she brought the phone back to her mouth. "Ryan, where are you?" "I think you know the answer to that. You look lovely in that black dress. It complements the pearls I got you last Christmas. Don't bother coming back home tonight. I'll be moving out tomorrow. Oh, and happy anniversary." "Ryan, please, we need to talk." That phrase, they always say that. It's probably the dumbest thing a woman caught cheating can say, but they always say it. The rain was pouring down as I left the restaurant. My car was in Baltimore, leaving me stranded in Philly. I began walking towards downtown, and within minutes, I was drenched. Yet somehow, I didn't mind. My phone rang incessantly, but I ignored it. Eventually, I switched it off to conserve battery. Missing out on the free Ruth's Chris steak dinner felt like a loss, until I stumbled upon a cheese steak shop. I was feeling low, but that cheese steak sandwich was the best I'd ever tasted. Renting a car and heading home would have been the easy option, but I didn't really want to go home. Home was comfortable with all my belongings, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't convince myself it was necessary to go there. From the steak shop, it was just a short walk to the nearest bar. After 6 drafts, I was ready for bed. I woke up in a seedy motel room, likely rented by the hour. My suit was ruined from the previous night's weather. 3 blocks away was the bus station. I bought a razor and shaving cream from a vending machine, and a few minutes later, I looked somewhat presentable. A pair of chinos and a polo shirt set me back less than $20 at a nearby store. I donated my suit and white shirt to Goodwill. By that time, the banks were open. Although I don't reside in Philadelphia, most of the banks and companies I deal with have their offices or headquarters there. I swiftly closed my checking and savings accounts, even withdrawing the funds from my daughter's college fund. When I informed the mortgage department of my decision to relinquish my home loan, they were taken aback. They couldn't understand why. Given I had over $60,000 in equity, there was no need for foreclosure. Nevertheless, they eventually conceded it was a good deal for them and allowed me to sign the release forms, though they insisted on my wife's signature as well. With a smirk, I informed them that was their problem. I also canceled my bank credit card after settling the balance. Fortunately, I had accumulated a substantial sum in my whole life insurance policies. The company agreed to send the checks to my sister in Savannah. Fidelity Mutual Funds also agreed to mail the checks for my closed account. My cell phone battery died, but a friendly secretary lent me her phone to call work. My department head at work was displeased with my sudden departure. Despite his counteroffers to retain me failing, he politely pressed for the reason behind my abrupt decision. He wasn't thrilled to hear that Patrick Roberts had been keeping me occupied to pursue my wife. I explained that it was a done deal and beyond fixing. Before transferring me to the personnel office, he assured me that Roberts would face consequences. Personnel readily agreed to send my final checks for pay, profit sharing, sick leave, and accrued vacation pay to my sister's address. A sympathetic secretary even provided me with Patrick Roberts' home phone number. I made 2 additional phone calls to cancel 2 more credit cards. An hour later, I boarded the bus to Baltimore. My plan was to retrieve my car and gather the few belongings I had left in the hotel room. The journey from Baltimore to Savannah would take a full day. My sister, Christina, and I were close, so I decided to confide in her and inform her about some checks that were coming to her house. I turned on my cell phone to charge it in the car, ignoring the several calls that came in during that time. Once settled, I resolved to get a new number. With many hours on the road, there was ample time for reflection. I couldn't fathom what motivated Michelle to leave with Patrick Roberts. I questioned if I had played a role in it, or if I was merely a bystander. It seemed I had fallen short as a husband in some way. However, after some contemplation, I realized I no longer felt the need to assign blame. It was time to let go and move forward. I regretted not having my birth certificate, passport, and car title with me. I would have to manage without them or find a way to retrieve them. Fortunately, I had my laptop and briefcase. As for the cell phone charger, I could make do, as I wouldn't be using it much anyway. My medical insurance was still valid for 90 days, but I wasn't anticipating any health issues. About an hour outside Baltimore, I phoned Patrick Roberts' wife. Patrick had been let go that morning for reasons he claimed were unspecified. She thanked me for providing a bit more detail and found retribution for both her and me. I felt he deserved at least that much. Then I called Christina to let her know I was on my way. "Welcome, my wandering brother," Christina greeted me from the front porch as I arrived. "Your wife called twice, trying to track you down, but wouldn't divulge why it was urgent or why you might be visiting your sister. I suppose you'll enlighten me now, or I'll have to kick your butt." The porch boasted 4 rocking chairs and an ice chest, likely stocked with beer. Christina, being older and perhaps wiser, took a seat and gestured for me to join her. "Judging by your expression, I'm guessing this was something you didn't anticipate," she said. "I never saw it coming and certainly never expected it. Your little brother got hit out of nowhere and could use some comforting words," I replied, accepting a cold beer and a sympathetic smile from Christina. The rockers were strategically placed for us to prop our feet up on the porch railing and watch the passing traffic. Christina and her husband, Gary, had bought the old 2-story brick house 20 years ago. Fortunately, Gary was handy, as he had to replace a lot of the lower structure's wood. Termites wreak havoc in damp coastal areas. Their investment had paid off, as the house was now part of the Savannah Historical District. "I suspect infidelity. Am I correct?" "Yep." "And who's the cheating one, Michelle or Ryan?" "Well, I'm too socially inept to even meet another woman, so it must have been her." Christina pondered for a moment. I wasn't trying to be clever, but it was hard to outright say my wife cheated on me. "Well, Ryan, that's unexpected. I never thought Michelle would do something like that. How did it happen?" "Don't know, don't care. It seems she got involved with my boss, and he started sending me out of town on business trips so they could be together. It was just luck that I found out. I had no clue. I didn't confront her. I just left." "Is there a chance you're mistaken?" "No. She lied to my face about it while it was happening. She told me on the phone she was home doing laundry, but she was sitting in a restaurant with him, 30 feet away from me. There was no doubt. Of course, I never caught them in the act, but I'm pretty sure it happened at some point." "Is there any chance of reconciliation?" "It's never going to happen." We opened another bottle and sat in silence for about 10 minutes. It was the first time I acknowledged what had happened, and it didn't feel good. "Why don't you freshen up for dinner? Gary will be home in a couple of minutes. You two can catch up while I get some shrimp boiled. He doesn't know anything, so it's up to you if you want to tell him. I won't say anything if you prefer." "Just tell him, Christina. It's better not to sweep something like this under the rug." I spent 2 days with Christina and Gary. They had 2 sons who were both married and living on their own. Gary had gained a few pounds, so he had plenty of extra clothes he wanted to give away. I gladly accepted them, as I needed some. Christina agreed to hold on to any checks or other mail that arrived for me until I could provide a forwarding address. I didn't know where I was headed next. Michelle called once the next day, but Christina told her she hadn't seen me. I asked Christina to call my daughters at college after I left and explain the situation as best she could. It was important to me that they knew their tuition would be taken care of. I wasn't ready to face that myself. Before leaving town, I got a new cell phone number and bought 2 pairs of comfortable shoes. I avoided the interstate and took old Route 301 south instead. The best part about being in the area was being able to have Crystal for lunch and Waffle House for breakfast. What more could a man want? I slept in the car the first night, parked between 2 enormous RVs in a Walmart parking lot. One of the nice things about Crystal, besides the sliders, is the free Wi-Fi. I didn't really have a pressing need for the internet, but it was comforting to know it was there if I did. As I drove along the Street Ryan's River, somewhere near Palatka, a stroke of luck changed my day for the better. It was mid-morning when I pulled into a small gas station, dock, and restaurant combo for a refuel. The place was a bit rundown, situated about 100 yards off the main road, but visible from the bridge crossing the river. Its gravel parking lot and weathered dock, which seemed to have once been a bustling marina, spoke of its history. The 2-story restaurant, half on the dock and half on land, hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in at least a decade. Across the street stood 3 aging mobile homes, matching the worn-out appearance of the restaurant. The gas station seemed tailored for boaters cruising the waterway, as indicated by the sign out front, Sadie's Catfish House. Memories of my high school days working at Captain D's flooded back, giving me a nostalgic twinge. Carefully navigating my way down towards the river, I couldn't help but notice the place was in need of some TLC. 2 teenage boys sat quietly on the dock, simply gazing out at the water. Meanwhile, loud voices emanated from the back of the restaurant, 1 male and 1 female. It seemed the boys were seeking refuge from whatever was unfolding inside. "Sounded like there's quite a commotion in there," I remarked, attempting to strike a polite conversation without intruding. Both boys looked up at me, the older one flashing a small smile. "Edward showed up to work drunk again," he explained. "Mom's thinking of firing him, but he's the only cook she can find. If he's out, she'll have to close up shop. She can't handle cooking and waiting tables at the same time. I assume you guys lend a hand around here. The restaurant sells beer, so Larry and I can't work in the dining room until we're 18, according to state law. We can pitch in the kitchen, but that doesn't really help Mom out much." Just then, Edward stumbled out the back door of the kitchen. It was clear from his failed attempts to get up that he was drunk. "And don't even think about coming back, you bastard." That marked my first encounter with Megan Fields, a Cajun woman adrift in Florida. She stood at the kitchen door, fury blazing in her eyes. It was fortunate for Edward that she didn't have anything in her hands, otherwise she might have hurled it at him. Megan was nearly 6 feet tall, all muscle. Her uniform did nothing to flatter her, and it was apparent she was not well endowed. I don't typically notice a woman's chest, but the absence was striking in this case. I scolded myself for being so tactless and tried to push the immature thought aside. She had shoulder-length auburn hair and sharp cheekbones that accentuated her dark brown eyes. The lack of makeup added to her less than feminine appearance. She was a tough woman who clearly had a hard life. She stood with her hands on her hips as Edward stumbled away across the parking lot. "What the hell are you looking at?" She sounded as angry with me as she had been with Edward. "My name is Ryan Turner. I was looking for a job." I don't know what possessed me to say that. I wasn't actually looking for a job, but it seemed like the best thing to say at the time. Something about the whole exchange set off a fit of giggles in the two boys. "Larry, Charles, get yourselves inside and start getting ready for lunch. There's nothing funny about this, and I don't appreciate your attitude," barked the stern voice of the woman I'd come to know as Megan, the Wicked Witch of the South, as the boys hurried indoors. Turning her attention back to me, she asked, "My name is Megan. Do you have any restaurant experience?" "I have 2 years under my belt at Capt D's, mostly in food prep and cooking. I'm not a master chef, but I can handle myself in a kitchen," I replied, inexplicably drawn into this game despite knowing it would wear thin soon. Yet her intensity fascinated me, holding my attention like a moth to a flame. My first day as a cook at Sadie's Catfish House went fairly smoothly. I made a few mistakes with orders, but nothing disastrous. The boys proved to be helpful, guiding me through standard procedures and locating supplies. It was mostly a routine of breading and frying. While I was more accustomed to batter-fried fish, the process was similar enough. The real hassle was cleaning the fryers after the lunch rush. I doubted they'd been cleaned in a year. Despite having a relatively simple oil filter system, it was still messy work. Megan and I spent the afternoon prepping for dinner service. She gave me a crash course in making coleslaw her way and went over the menu to address any questions I might have. Catfish dominated the menu. Though it hadn't been discussed explicitly, I got the sense she assumed I was here to stay. Flattered and intrigued, I found myself with plenty of time to spare and enjoyed the challenge. After we finished cleaning up in the evening, Megan handed me a cold long neck and we sat down to talk. "If I forget, I want to thank you for helping me out today. I really appreciated your assistance." "No problem. For $20 an hour, I'm game for just about anything." "Whoa, hold up. Where did the $20 figure come from?" "Just trying to gauge how grateful you are." "Edward gets $6 an hour. I don't have to, and I can't afford to pay that minimum wage. I can bump it up a little, but don't get too greedy." "6 is fine, Mrs. Fields. My big issue is a place to stay. The boys and I live in one of the trailers across the street. Nicole, the owner, lives in the big one. I rent the restaurant from her. Her son Mark runs the gas station and lives in the third trailer. There's a storage room upstairs, but it's bare. You can use the restaurant's toilet, and I can let you shower in the trailer." "And how much for these luxurious accommodations?" "How about free overtime? I pay you for 40 hours a week, and anything over that you do for free." "Are you open every day?" I close Mondays. It's my day at the beauty spa. I found her humor suited her personality. How could I not like this woman? The first night in the storage room was rough. It was dusty, dirty, and the floor was hard. But it was better than sleeping in the Subaru. The nice thing was that I had a full kitchen to cook breakfast. After a week, I had settled in quite comfortably. I rang up Christina and gave her the address. She had a handful of mail to send down, hopefully containing some checks. On the first Monday, I headed into Palatka and set up a bank account along with a safety deposit box. It was a relief to finally unload all that cash I'd been carrying around. I took the boys with me and picked up some secondhand furniture. They enjoyed lending a hand, and I cherished their company. Showering in Megan's trailer felt awkward to me. I felt like I was imposing on her. So with some PVC pipe and a bit of time, I rigged up an outdoor shower behind the restaurant. It resembled a cabana setup and worked out well, as long as the weather wasn't too chilly. The boys pitched in with setting it up and even tested it out first. Megan's husband had been killed on an offshore drilling rig 8 years ago during a hurricane. She received some insurance money from the incident and used it to start the restaurant. Nicole and she got along fairly well. Larry and Charles spent a lot of time with me, perhaps seeking a father figure. My relationship with their mother remained strictly professional. There were moments when I thought of her differently, but I didn't want to risk jeopardizing a good thing. It was time to touch base with my daughters. Luckily, they were both at Penn State, so I only needed to make one call. From Ashley's voice, I could tell she was the one who answered the phone. "Hey, it's Dad. Just wanted to catch up with you guys. Is Haley around?" "Haley's in class. We were waiting for your call. Mom's been acting weird. Haley and I need to hear your side. What's going on?" "Sorry about the confusion, kiddo. So, what's Mom's explanation?" "She said she set up a romantic anniversary dinner for you both at a steakhouse. Your boss helped out, but when you got there, you saw them together and freaked. Mom didn't get a chance to explain. She seemed really upset." "Well, Ashley, that's quite the tale. But it's just that, a tale. Your mom didn't know I'd be there. She was shocked when I showed up. I called her from inside the restaurant before she even knew I was there. She told me she was at home doing laundry. When she saw me, she panicked. It wasn't a surprise party. My boss and your mom planned for me to be out of town so they could meet up. Caught her red-handed, and now she's scrambling to cover it up. That sounds more believable. What do you want us to do? And why are you calling from Savannah?" "I'm not actually in Savannah. Just got the phone there. Try not to be too hard on your mom, but see if you can get her to come clean." "Got it. Anything else?" "If you're going home for Thanksgiving, go into the den and grab my passport, birth certificate, and the Subaru title. Mail them to Aunt Christina's. She'll get them to me. And whatever you do, don't give Mom my cell number. I don't want to have to change it again. Apologies for everything, Dad. Haley and I are here to support you if you need anything. Thanks. Oh, and by the way, I've got all your tuition money, so no need to worry about that." I felt relieved knowing that was taken care of, although I dreaded having to break the news to Ashley about her mother. I was sure Ashley believed what I told her. Michelle's explanation was interesting, given the circumstances, but it wouldn't hold up. I was curious about the affair, but the pain it would cause wasn't worth it. Things were going smoothly at the Catfish House. I received the checks from Christina and the documents the girls sent down. I'd soon get new Florida car tags when the PA ones expired. I deposited my restaurant paychecks into my bank account, but the rest of the money stayed in the safety deposit box. With the low interest rates, it felt safer there, and I didn't feel like I was missing out on much. I ate at work all week, so Mondays were my chance for something different. The boys were always up for it, and Megan naturally joined us. It was my treat, and though neither of us admitted it, it felt like a sort of date. Chinese buffets were the favorite, but sushi was growing on us too. Sometimes we ended up driving quite a bit, but I didn't mind. Megan had mellowed out significantly. I hadn't seen her nasty side since that first day. Sometimes I caught her looking at me while we worked, but she quickly looked away. I was still married, but Megan was starting to catch my eye. The restaurant maintained a steady flow of customers, but its earnings barely covered expenses. I lived on a shoestring budget. Megan's payment went straight to the bank, leaving me with minimal living costs. I only splurged on a tank of gas each month and our Monday night outings with what had become my surrogate family: Larry, Charles, and Megan. I'm not sure how or when they became family to me, it just seemed to happen naturally. Nicole, on the other hand, had her lunch at Sadie's every day, courtesy of Megan. You could see she was growing weary of the menu. Despite being just an employee, I kept my observations to myself, silently noting the preferences of our mainly local clientele, who seemed more interested in the beer than the catfish. Just before Christmas, Haley called. "Dad, how are things going?" "All right, I guess. No complaints. Is it tuition time again?" "Next month. I just wanted to check in and make sure you're okayed for the holidays." "I'm good. You and Ashley will be with your mother, I assume." "Yeah, but we're not exactly looking forward to it, especially now that we know the whole story." "Would you mind filling me in?" "You're not going to like it, but you were right about everything. Mom and Mr. Roberts were seeing each other for over a year. Eventually, she admitted it was a fulfilling relationship. She doesn't want a divorce, but she also doesn't want to end things with him. She said she was hoping to keep everything the way it was because it was perfect for her. She started telling us details, and Ashley, and I had to ask her to stop. Ashley is barely speaking to Mom anymore." "You're correct. I didn't want to hear that. What's her relationship with Roberts like now?" "Oh, there isn't one. He got fired from his job and blamed her. His wife filed for divorce, and he blamed Mom for that too. Last I heard, he moved to Chicago and didn't ask Mom to go with him. Mom got a job at an insurance company answering phones. She ran out of money very quickly after you left and couldn't even pay the utility bills. She's just scraping by now, but I think she's selling off her jewelry and stuff. The bank told her she didn't have to make the house payments anymore if she signed a release. I think she's going to try and sell it instead. I'll send you a power of attorney form so that your mother can sell the house more easily. You can give it to her when you go home for Christmas. She'll probably appreciate that. She was wondering why you hadn't filed for divorce yet." "I'm not going to. When she's ready, she'll have to do it. I have no money, no job, and I'm living off what I took from the bank when I left. It'll run out very soon. I saw no reason to let my daughters or my wife know that I had a nice stash in a Palatka bank waiting for my day of freedom. My wife had never shown an interest in our finances, and unless she got a really good lawyer, she'd never know. I figured she'd go for the cheapest lawyer she could find. I'll inform her when we head downstairs. Haley, I apologize for not getting you and the girls anything for the holidays this year. I'll make it up to you, I promise. After the first of the year, just let us know where you are, and we can come visit you during spring break. You can make it up to us then. It's a deal. Have a wonderful Christmas." For the past month or so, I've been using Megan's shower. She always managed to find something else to do while I was there, so there was no chance for anything improper. Northern Florida gets cold, so I had to rely on her facilities for a couple of months. I had reached the point where I wouldn't mind a bit of inappropriate behavior on her part, but I wasn't smooth enough to orchestrate such a thing. I was afraid that if I did something wrong, it would upset her. Typically, when I showered, the boys were at school. Feeling guilty for not getting my daughters anything for Christmas, I felt even worse when I got the boys new Game Boys and Megan a turquoise concho belt. She always wore her blouses out, and I couldn't help but imagine how good she would look with the right accessories. We closed the Catfish house early on Christmas Eve and exchanged gifts. Megan and the boys got me a GPS for the Subaru. We indulged in boiled shrimp and whole crawdads. It was enjoyable for a while, but the boys wanted to play with their new toys. Megan told them to go home and not wait up. Charles winked and gave me a thumbs up as they left. It looked like it was going to be a good holiday. Megan and I chatted for about an hour. We avoided any mention of our previous spouses. Even though I was still married, Megan didn't seem to mind. Since I was painfully slow on the uptake, she finally took my hand and led me upstairs. Both of us had months of pent-up frustration about to explode. It became a race to shed our clothes. Megan had the physique of a female weightlifter, with well-defined abs reminiscent of those seen on Bowflex commercials. Instead of soft breasts, she had firm, wonderful globes that showed no hint of sag despite having 2 kids. My fascination with her lack of ample chest adornment was unfounded. She was truly beautiful. We spent a wonderful night together, enjoying each other's company and getting to know one another. Afterward, we cuddled under the blanket for a few minutes, and she looked up and said, "Merry Christmas, Ryan Turner." Hearing the boys downstairs, Megan jumped out of bed and began to dress. By the time I made it downstairs, the boys were already eating breakfast. Charles gave me a big grin and another thumbs up, while Larry seemed oblivious to what was going on. I ate with the boys while their mom went home to take a shower. At that moment, a terrible thought crossed my mind about birth control. After that night, spending time with Megan became a regular occurrence. She didn't usually stay overnight, but it was nice when she did. I think Charles explained the facts of life to Larry shortly after the holidays, and both boys seemed okay with the arrangement. After the new year, Christina forwarded divorce papers. Michelle included a small note thanking me for the power of attorney and informing me that she had an offer on the house. The divorce proceedings were simple and straightforward. I was responsible for the girls' school tuition, and that was about it. I signed the papers and mailed them back to Michelle's lawyer. I realized I had revealed my location, but I no longer cared. Megan approached me about revamping the restaurant menu, giving me free rein to make changes as I saw fit. Though I was initially hesitant to take on such a task, I appreciated her confidence in me. Our seafood wholesaler was more than willing to include frozen whitefish portions in our weekly catfish delivery. Charles was enthusiastic about learning to make fish and chips, albeit the American version of the British classic. Megan and I managed everything during the school year, handling the slow but steady business with ease. However, we hadn't anticipated the consequences of increased business. On weekends, I persuaded the boys to help with painting. My standards weren't too high, so I was content with whatever they accomplished. While the entire business was Megan's, I sensed she wanted me to take on a greater role in its operation. Initially, I only made suggestions, but over time she seemed relieved when I took charge of decisions without consulting her. She never criticized or complained about my choices. Running a business like this wasn't my initial plan, but it felt like it was becoming my destiny. I hope that doesn't sound too profound. Mark caught the entrepreneurial bug and even spruced up the gas station. A call to his distributor resulted in shiny new signs and updated pumps that accepted credit cards. Once cleaned up, a salesman convinced him to install racks selling various tourist items, all at no cost to Mark, who received a cut of each sale. It elevated the station's appearance, making it seem less like a run-down establishment. Charles celebrated his 16th birthday by obtaining his learner's permit, and I thoroughly enjoyed teaching him how to drive our Outback. Megan seemed relieved that she didn't have to take on that task. In 2 years, it would be Larry's turn. One day, a good old boy from near Moss Bluff showed up with a pickup truck loaded with a freezer full of gator tail meat. He spent a good 30 minutes trying to convince me of the nutritional merits of eating reptiles. While he knew his subject matter well, he was a terrible salesman. I tried to show interest so as not to hurt his feelings. He also had some frozen cooter in the truck, and I got the sense he was feeling the pressure when he made a smart move. "I'll leave you 10 pounds of gator tail and 10 pounds of turtle for you to try out, free of charge. I'll be back in a week to see how things go. Would that be okay with you, mister?" He completely caught me off guard. I had been feeling confident, but he hit me with a zinger. Sure, I'd be glad to give it a try. Any preparation suggestions? Most people just like to flatten it, bread it, and fry it. If I decide I like it, how much is this going to cost me? He reached into the truck and handed me a green sheet of paper with prices, phone numbers, and state permit numbers to sell the gator and the snapping turtle meat. Depending on the portions I served, it would be possible to make a nice profit with what he had if I could sell it. "Thank you, Mr. Allen. I'd be happy to give it a try. See you in a week." His name, phone number, and address adorned the top of the sheet. The fish and chips menu item was a hit. Initially only offered during evenings when Charles was on duty, it quickly became an all-day option. By the end of the week, the gator and cooter were sold out, prompting a call to Frank Allen for more. The most popular dish turned out to be a combo platter featuring gator, cooter, and catfish. Business was booming faster than expected. Megan and I usually handled the dishwashing after meals, but the increase in customers left us short on clean dishes. That's when we hired Hector. Hector didn't speak much English, but he was proficient at washing dishes and never complained. He rode his bicycle to the restaurant daily and worked both lunch and dinner shifts. We had no idea where he lived. When Frank Allen delivered the gator and cooter the following Saturday, he brought a young girl with him. Charles eagerly assisted in carrying the bags of frozen meat from the truck, barely taking his eyes off the girl, which led to a comical stumble. She appeared to be around Charles's age, maybe slightly older. Megan seemed amused by the scene, and at supper that night, we all enjoyed teasing him about it. February came to an unexpected close. I was just getting the fryers started when Megan returned to the kitchen. "Surprise, Ryan, you've got a visitor. Your wife's here," Megan announced, her tone utterly neutral. I couldn't discern any emotion from her, no happiness, sadness, or concern. With a resigned exhale, I stepped out into the dining area to see Michelle for the first time in months. She looked as stunning as ever, her hair and makeup flawless, her outfit highlighting her figure. Megan stayed behind in the kitchen. "Hi, Ryan. You're not easy to track down. You're looking good," Michelle greeted me. "You too. I wasn't expecting to see you. Is there a specific reason for your visit?" I sensed her nervousness. She was chewing her lip and shifting her weight. "I just wanted to give you the final divorce decree. It went through faster than expected, and I thought you'd want it ASAP." She handed me a folded document, which I didn't bother opening. "The house has been sold and settled, so I brought a check for half of the proceeds. It's only $23,000. I didn't realize the realtor's commission would be so high." She passed me a cashier's check with my name on it. I took it and endorsed it. When I handed it back, she looked at me questioningly. "I don't need the money, Michelle. Keep it. It'll help you get started. Just curious, what are your plans?" "I've sold everything except my clothes. I'm on my way to stay with my sister in Dallas. She has a job lined up for me at the same place where she works. The girls have promised to come down and visit next summer. I hope everything works out for you. Do you have any questions or anything you want to discuss before I go?" "No, not really. I'm good. I don't need to know any more than I do now. In fact, just having you here is more than I can handle. Thanks for dropping off the papers. Excuse me now. I have to get back to work. The lunch crowd will be here soon." I turned and walked into the kitchen without looking back. I was trying not to be rude, but I didn't want to be with her any longer than I had to. Many people will say I was cold, but I don't care. There is nothing I could do to her that would make up for what she did to me. Megan was standing in the kitchen, looking out over the river. There was still no expression on her face. I walked to the end of the room and looked out over the parking lot. Michelle had just gotten into her car and was sitting in the driver's seat, crying. A minute later, she was gone, and I would never see her again. "I apologize, Megan. I had no idea she would turn up here. I'm not even sure how she found me." "I understand it's not my place, but what did she want?" "She gave me my copy of the final divorce decree. She's free now." "And you?" "I'm not so fortunate. I've managed to get myself tangled up again, this time with a captivating Cajun queen. I suppose I'm just a sucker for extraordinary women." "I don't see a ring on your finger." "How about tomorrow?" Finally, I received a response. Megan had a wide grin as she wrapped her arms around my neck. After several minutes of passionate kissing, she pulled back and looked at me. "Do you remember our Christmas Eve together?" "Of course. How could I ever forget?" "Well, congratulations, you're going to be a father." We got married the next day, and I moved out of the storeroom. The boys were just as thrilled as I was. Nicole's visits to the restaurant ceased, so Megan started bringing light meals or soup to her trailer after the rush. One day, Mark sat down with Megan and me, telling us it was time for Nicole to move to an assisted living facility. To afford it, she had to sell the marina complex, though it wasn't much of a marina anymore. Nicole was still sharp and clear-headed. I didn't discuss it with Megan, but I began negotiations with Nicole. It took most of my savings, but I bought the entire operation, including the trailers. The only condition was that Mark could continue running the gas station and boat slips. I'd pay him a salary and provide free lodging in his trailer, which worked out well for both of us since the station was profitable. I upgraded the kitchen with a dishwasher, which made Hector very happy. We also hired a waitress to assist Megan, hoping to have her trained by Megan's due date. The waitress, a single mom with 2 kids, was thrilled when we offered her the empty trailer at a fair rate. Epilogue. As the year progressed, the marina flourished beyond our expectations. Business boomed, and we introduced boat-run shrimp and peel-and-eat platters, catering to our female customers. By the end of summer, we had a dozen full-time boats in the new slips, with a waiting list for any available slots. Money wasn't an issue, just time. I felt content and happy. Charles found a steady relationship with Frank Allen's daughter, Tracy. He spent every chance he could on the outback. Larry started working with Mark and even asked his mom if he could take over the gas station when Mark retired. We hadn't realized Mark was considering retirement, and it seemed a couple of years away. Charles expressed his desire to stay with the restaurant. After a few days with their mother, Haley and Ashley came to spend the rest of the summer helping out. They found staying in the storeroom amusing and didn't mention their mother. Megan got along great with my daughters. They say the gender of a baby is determined by the father's genes. In September, Megan had a baby girl, whom we named Nicole. When our first wedding anniversary arrived, Megan asked where I wanted to go to celebrate. I replied, anywhere but a steakhouse. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.